Somehow, this message has got to get to those people who are sitting on those green benches in the Palace of Westminster, that government is here to serve the people, not the other way around. And changing Britain for good, 24 to 29, that is all based on this one word, which is hope. Hope is who we are. And I believe we can be a nation of hope that both experiences that as an intrinsic value within our own lives, and where Britain can once again become a beacon of hope to the world around us. And I've titled this seminar, My Experiences, Lessons Learned, and Looking Ahead. And you are most welcome if you are on this call or just joining us at the moment, or if you are watching this at some later stage. I hope that the information that I share with you today, as well as some of the thoughts about the way forward, will be encouraging and inspiring and help us to realize that we do have a tremendous opportunity to change our future by the things that we do in the present. Seat for John Major, who was for a time a prime minister here in the United Kingdom. So I'm going to share on four main areas. The first will be about why I had to stand as Huntingdon's independent MP, why I had this very strong conviction that whatever the circumstances might be, I had to be that man. I'm going to then share about what we had to do. And I do want to stress that I could not have done anything that I did without, firstly, the support of Mandy, my wife. This year we celebrate 41 years in marriage, and also a team, a small team of really faithful, hardworking people who I believe are joining us on the seminar today. Then I want to share a little bit about what we experienced, what we felt, what we witnessed, and what we learned. Now, admittedly, most of this is based on my own subjective experiences, but I believe they also represent some aspects of our team as well. And then finally, I want to share about where do we go from here? Can we change Britain for good? And for those of you who want to remain at the end of this, I'll be happy to answer any questions and also have a brief discussion. So please don't feel you have to rush off. So why did I have to stand as Huntingdon's independent MP? Well, one of those reasons, and there are several here, is that I believe that Britain is now facing its greatest crisis since 1939. And indeed, I believe it's even more so now that we have this Labour government in place. It's a government without any mandate from the people because of the very broken system of voting we have. But we are in great trouble. And I would say, as I did on our website, the greatest since 1939. Now, none of us on this call were born then, but we know from either our parents or from reading history books that it was a very serious time as Britain was entering into an extraordinary Second World War, having lost millions of its young men, the cream of its youth, in a war that they thought would have ended all wars, the Great War, just 20 years prior. I believe also, and I believe then, that every institution upon which we relied has failed. And that was another reason why I felt that with an experience of a quarter of a century, 25 years in local government, and another 20 in broadly speaking, the public sector and in associated areas, I felt that with all of our systems broken, not least being the National Health Service, upon which all of us rely at some point or the other, with those having failed us, I needed to enter the fray. I also felt that our nation's leadership had lost touch, and it has certainly lost touch with the reality of the daily struggles of families, the old, the young, the vulnerable, and that Parliament run by career politicians, and don't we see it now? Many of them with great wealth and civil servants, whatever their wealth, but certainly leaning towards cultural Marxism, does not represent the British people. And I was saying during the course of my campaign, if you want a career politician, vote for someone else. I am not that man or woman. I'm not here for a job. I'm here because our nation is so badly broken. And I believed then, and I believe today, that these people are bent on a course that opposes the freedoms, the sovereignty, the compassion, and the care that are the hallmarks of our British way of life. I'll touch upon that towards the end of this seminar as well. And of course, that way of life is the reason that so many people are drawn to the UK, thousands of whom do so illegally with no intention of integrating or showing loyalty to our heritage, our customs, or our traditions. Since 2018, we'd had 116,000 illegal channel crossings. And that number, which I took at the beginning of this year, has been far exceeded. And I believe then that we need radical transformation, a people's parliament that is made up of truly independent MPs. That's in preparation for wholesale systemic change. In other words, we need a people's parliament based on the current system. If we can achieve it, and the recent election has proven how difficult that is when people who don't have a substantial share of the vote get the majority of the seats in parliament, we need wholesale systemic change, but only a people's parliament, I believe, will bring that to pass. So those are the reasons impelling me to stand as the independent MP here in Huntingdon. And I shared in the public meetings these two core thoughts. One is the bad news, which is that Britain's health is critical and requires ICU intervention. It needs intervention in the intensive care unit. But the good news is that Britain's health can be improved, revived, recovered, and restored to a good quality of life. And those were some aspects of why I felt I really needed to develop this theme of changing Britain for good. C.S. Lewis, the author of the beloved Narnia Chronicles, said, when the whole world is running towards a cliff, the man running in the opposite direction appears to have lost his mind. William Penn, one of the founding fathers of the United States of America, said, right is right, even if everyone is against it, and wrong is wrong, even if everyone is for it. And these were some of the themes underpinning changing Britain for good. So I'm going on to share a little of what we had to do. There are two slides here, which is why this says part one and the second is part two. So on the 5th of February, at the beginning of this year, I attended with some of our friends. One of them is Dr. Lisa Noland, a friend of mine who may be on the call tonight, attended a meeting at the House of Commons, which Andrew Bridgen had called, with people like Christian Anderson from the European Parliament and others, to talk about the very serious problems afflicting Europe and the world through the power grab by the World Health Organization. And he felt, and he announced at that meeting on the 5th of February, that the worst kept secret in Westminster was that the general election was going to be called for the 5th of May, so coterminous with the local government elections. So having done that, or having heard that, I thought, well, I now need to take action. And from a standing start, I began to seek to get to grips with election law. I read the Electoral Commission's website at least twice, made contact with them as well to ask on a number of questions, and began to design and produce leaflets, the website, and a lot more. And then called together a group of friends who I hoped would share with me and with Mandy in the challenge that was facing us if we were going to get to a 5th of May general election. And between the 5th of February and the 5th of March, I was doing a number of things so that I would be ready for this inaugural meeting on the 5th of March, which we held in our home, Changing Britain for Good. And I'm not sure what our friends made of it, but probably a little shell-shocked. They all signed up to come and help us, and how grateful we are. Although not everyone stayed the course, we nevertheless were grateful for people's thoughts, their prayers, and just the general sense that there was a group of people who would be with us. And a few more joined us as the journey was prolonged. So we then embarked upon an intensive distribution of leaflets and conversations on a door-to-door basis in street markets, in public meetings, in shops and banks and queues. Basically, anywhere we went, certainly anywhere I went, and I know Mandy was doing the same, we would be chatting to people. I'd let them know that I was standing as the Independent MP. Mandy would be handing out leaflets when she was at the gym classes, not the gym, but the exercise classes she went to. And we had a number of street outreaches in Huntingdon and St. Ives on the 9th, 16th, and 23rd of March. And I have to say that the folks who came with us were really great. It's going out on the streets and handing out leaflets and engaging in a conversation, even if it means you can go and talk to that man over there because he's the independent, isn't everyone's cup of tea. I do accept that. And I just want to pay tribute to everyone who joined with us. And we then had 7 public meetings in the main centers of population in our area between the 19th of March and the 30th of April. And overall, there were about 100 people who attended, which isn't a huge number when you think we could have had nearer 500. Some of our venues were really quite big. But nevertheless, our little team came out with us. I was really grateful to them. And we met with people. We had some questions and answers. We only had one man who walked out in one of the meetings. It got a little bit heated, but basically everyone stayed the course. And they were good meetings. They helped us to share the message. And then we thought that when we got to the end of our public meetings and the general election had not been called, it was time to pause and prepare for an autumn general election. Little did we know that on the 22nd of May, the election would be called. And so the first action I had to make was to cancel the holiday that Mandy and I had booked to go to Weymouth and to start in earnest for what was going to be a hugely challenging time as we began then to prepare for an election on the 4th of July. So we had a meeting on the 28th of May, which was in order to enable us to get ready for what was going to happen. And on the 4th of June, I delivered my nomination papers to the district council, along with the £500 deposit, which I didn't get back, by the way, because I didn't poll the necessary 5% of the votes. I think I would have done if one Mr. Nigel Farage had not decided to come and lead the Reform Party. Up until that time, I think things were going, based on local polling, going in my direction. But anyway, that's life. And we then embarked upon a huge sequence of activities. I attended events, a number of events on D-Day, from the morning right through to the evening, the beacon lighting, a mosque, the Huntingdon Mosque on the 7th of June, and the Huntingdon Riverside Gala, which a number of friends came, and it was a dreadful day in some respects because of the weather, but there they were, and what a fantastic showing our folks had. We spent that time also designing and creating leaflets, posters, T-shirts, bags, tabards. I had to go from a standing start, not only with the website, but with social media, lots of content, videos, and our friends Anna in particular, working very hard to produce lots and lots of posters and even T-shirts, as I say, bags. And there we were out in the public domain. And then we had 3 hustings in Kimbolton, in Huntingdon, and in Alconbury on the 17th, 18th, and 19th of June. Again, our team came and supported us for most of those. Churches together finally woke up and decided that they needed to do something about it, which was great. And I'm really pleased they did. And we had a number of outreaches on the 22nd, 24th, 26th, 28th, 29th June, and the 1st and 3rd of July, right up to polling day in the street markets of Huntingdon and St. Ives. And we engaged with hundreds of people. And in addition to that, I had something like 700 emails delivered to me, campaigning emails on a very wide range of issues, including hunting, chickens, beagles, the termination of babies' lives in the womb, assisted dying, whole range. And I sought to respond to everyone, barring a few. I didn't respond to those people who were specifically asking questions about Europe and Brexit, because I knew exactly what they were Remainers or Remoners, however you want to call it, who clearly had an agenda, didn't want to respect the will of the people. And in relation to the weather, climate change, which I'll address at the end of this, again, I realized there was really no point. I was asked questions about Israel and the Middle East, and where I did respond, I clearly did not give people the answer they wanted. My answer was, broadly speaking, I'm against all killing, all war. The answer to war is not more war, it's peace. And then I was expecting, I was wanting for all money that left this country for whatever reason to be paused until we had a full audit. But because I didn't give them the answer they wanted, they decided that they would not be voting for me. Well, that's life. I wasn't going to be trying to curry favor with people and give them the answer they wanted. An election dedication service had been organized by the Perry Baptist Church, which was a wonderful service, actually. And some of the candidates attended, and they weren't too familiar with the Lord's Prayer, I could tell. I won't tell you who they were. But nevertheless, it was a great opportunity for the people in that community. They weren't all churchgoers, actually, people who came along in order to show solidarity for all the candidates. That was great. And then on the 4th of July, it was the general election. The announcement was made at 2:50 that morning. So it was an intensive period of distribution of leaflets and conversations, door-to-door activities. We had relatively little trouble. We did have some problems from people, which I'll share with you in a minute. But by and large, people were saying, this is great. We like the idea of someone who's independent, who has no allegiance to any political party, but is saying he's there for the people, because that's what I'm saying. You are my party. You're the boss. And within 100 days, I would be holding public consultations to establish their priorities, taking those back to the green benches of Westminster. So I continued to respond to people's inquiries right up to election day. They were very surprised when I was telephoning them, and I'm still doing that. One day nursery in St. Ives, which has been here for 35 years, is set to be closed down by the district council because the council wants the land back and to sell it and to make money out of it. And I'm challenging them on that. I'm taking it up on their behalf. Of course, it would be nice if the new local MP were doing that, but I'm doing that anyway. And I think that's important. Whoever stands in any local or parliamentary, especially parliamentary election, needs to be a local person, someone who has the integrity to demonstrate they're doing it because they are part of that community. And I hope that is how systems of parliamentary democracy will change in the future, so that the first past the post is a matter of historical accident, really, or intention, and we can have a fairer system. So what do we experience and feel and witness and learn? Well, I experienced, and I know my team did as well, that standing as an independent MP is physically, psychologically, and financially demanding. And going forward, I believe that what we need is a system where, out of the public purse, a certain sum of money set aside for each candidate and political party standing, no more and no less. So everyone has the same amount of money, and we don't have donors, massive donors doing this, so that we have a level playing field. Um, I wonder, though, whether the big beasts, the blue and red teams, or even the others actually would want that. I also saw that the scale of human needs and problems is very deep. Now, I know that because I've been in the public sector all my life, but it's becoming even more perilous for our people and for our nation. People who can't afford to eat. I met them on the street. People who are mentally ill, whose mental health has suffered greatly because here in Huntingdon, the mental health unit had been closed down, and they have nowhere to go. I also experienced assaults. They were ad hominem attacks. That's where someone attacks the person, the man, rather than the policies. And these were attacks on social media from people I did not know. They were, in the main, I think they were almost entirely Labour Party supporters. And I invited them to come out and have a chat with me, tell me what their problems were. None came, none accepted my invitations to face conversations. Where there were people out in the street who had questions, I was very happy to have a chat with them. And I think, generally speaking, they went away feeling that they had their questions answered. The majority of comments and conversations we had were wholly supportive and encouraging. And as I said earlier, people liked the idea of having someone independent, truly independent, stand for them. But as the election showed, years of brainwashing by the corporate media, the BBC has a lot to answer for in this regard. They drove the public to this binary choice that it's got to be the red or the blue teams, completely ignoring the fact that, frankly, these are a uniparty. It's just that the people who are now in charge are just a lot worse than the others, because they do have a very deliberate agenda to hook us up to global totalitarian control. So I'll be sharing a little bit about how we can resist that going forward at the end of this seminar. We also experienced this idea that people say that nothing will change. Well, nothing will change for the better unless we, the people, take action. And I'm even more convinced of that. We saw that apathy and resignation in the hearts and minds of people are the greatest barriers to changing Britain for good. Now, at this point, can I just mention that on this call, in this seminar, there are people from a variety of backgrounds, and everyone is completely welcome. I will try and reflect some of that in the context of the seminar, and particularly the fact that there are people of faith from the Christian community who have been praying and who really want to see some return to some of those values. And again, I'll touch on that at the end. But apathy and resignation are right across the nation. We've seen that in Christian communities. You know, you'd expect Christian churches to be much more alive and alert to what is going on. But and especially given that the 19th century, the greatest era of social reform in Britain, was led by Christian philanthropists. But we seem to have a deficit of that at the moment. We saw that there is a need to work together in teams, to be willing to go the extra mile, to make a sacrifice of time and money and effort. You know, folks, we will not get anything changed in our nation if people aren't willing to get off their couches and to be part of a team where together everyone achieves more. We saw that you're more capable of being part of the change in the world than you already know. People were doing things far beyond their comfort zone, and how strong we were as a result. We also saw that the British voting system is corrupt because it doesn't reflect what the people want. Therefore, it has to be changed. We also saw that the media, including social media, are not on the side of changing Britain for good, because they were shadow banning our posts and not giving us fair coverage. And sadly, at a national level, the BBC and the corporate media did not give independents any coverage whatsoever. So where do we go from here? And this is really bringing us towards the end of the seminar, but I really want to concentrate on this because this is very important. The days ahead for our nation, I believe, now look very dark. They're troubled as the governance of the United Kingdom has been seized by men and women who appear determined to excel all their predecessors in destroying our values, our culture, and our customs. Let's be very clear at this point, irrespective of what the background is of anyone on this call or watching this later on, the values, the culture, and the customs of Britain, of these British Isles, are Christian. They're Judeo-Christian. That is why we have what we have. That's why we have the freedom. You don't have to be a Christian to live in this country. You don't have to go to church. You don't have to follow a creed. You don't have to be religious in any way. You can be an atheist. You can be a humanist. You can have any other religion. But the values, the culture, and customs of our country are Christian. They're Judeo-Christian. They're derived from the Bible. And we need to start owning up to them. There's no need to be apologetic or to worry about what anyone might say. You know, you're not being racist because of that. You're not being antagonistic towards people who come from abroad. You're just stating the truth. And the people who are in charge now, more than the people who've just left, who've been here for the last 14 years, the Conservatives, they are determined to change that and to somehow rewrite history. So where do we go from here? Can we change Britain for good? Well, there are 2 points I want to mention here at the beginning. One is that the next general election for the UK has to be held no later than Wednesday, the 15th of August, 2029. So you may want to put that in your diary. Important point also is that if our democracy is to be saved, our nation to be renewed, and Britain to be changed for good, there are things that we must do. What are they? Well, looking forward, restoring Britain's unique heritage, where all UK residents respect these things. This, I believe, is the way forward. I believe this needs to be the thrust. It's nothing to do with the economy. It's everything to do with who we are. So restoring Britain's unique heritage, where all our residents, whoever they are, wherever they come from, and everyone is welcome, provided they're willing to respect our values, our culture, our customs, our literature, our language, our goodness, our kindness, all of these things, where they recognize that these values, goodness, kindness, integrity, honor, that they are fashionable once again. And where human life is sacred. That means from conception to death, human life is sacred. Those have been underpinning values in Britain, where family is central. And most importantly, where government serves the people. Now, somehow, this message has got to get to those people who are sitting on those green benches in the Palace of Westminster. That government is here to serve the people, not the other way around. And changing Britain for good, 24 to 29, which is the journey that I am now on, and I'll be sharing a little bit about how we go forward on that. That is all based on this one word, which is hope. Hope is who we are. And I believe we can be a nation of hope that both experiences that as an intrinsic value within our own lives, and where Britain can once again become a nation of hope, a beacon of hope to the world around us. So I want to share a little bit about the way ahead. And some of this is going to be slightly philosophical. Some of it is going to be practical and action-oriented. 5 points in the way ahead. One is going to be around our inner life and reflections. Then I want to share about how we can think positively about the way ahead. Thirdly, I'd like to share some effective actions that we can all think about taking in the days ahead. Fourthly, some key areas for public discussion. And fifthly, some additional actions which I believe I have specifically got to be taking. So firstly, your inner life and reflections. Friends, I want to encourage you to do these things. Live life and reject discouragement. Don't allow the things that are happening around us to bring you down. And I want to encourage you that the best really is yet to come. Be informed and be aware. For goodness sake, and this is my advice to you, do not follow the corporate media. If you still have a BBC television license, there's a lot better uses you can put that money to than watching the drivel that comes out from them. They have been more responsible than any organ of communication in Britain for bringing down not just the tenor of debate, but the sense of anything being positive. They were actively engaged in Project Fear from 2020 onwards, and now we know that because the COVID inquiry has brought that out. They have followed the line of Goebbels. Tell a lie for long enough and people will believe it's true. So we need to be informed and aware. We need to think about our future. I was speaking to a man yesterday in the street, a builder. He said, Chan, he said, I'm so glad I'm not going to be here when all of this really finally hits the fan. I said, listen, Barry, you've got to be part of the change if you want to see change in the world. So think about your future, build relationships. We are stronger when we are together, and we need our relationships. Be part of a community, whatever that community is. And communities like this one, we'll be having more Zoom conversations in the days that lie ahead. I'll be holding meetings on Zoom, as well as public meetings here and quite likely across the country. Be part of those communities of change. Consider also what comes after this life. That's really important. Whether you have faith or not, begin to ask the question. And whatever your answer you come to, I'm not going to tell you what to think. Think about what comes after this life, because that can impel us and draw us forward if we're looking further than the end of our lives. Decide what you need to focus on. Ask the questions. What are your priorities? Your health, your finances, your family, your business, your church. Ask the question, what future do you want? What does that future look like? And ask the question, what might prevent that from happening? It's rational, isn't it? If you have decided that you want a particular future and you're going towards that, if you know what might stop that happening, what can you do then to remove those risks? And the great thing is, we're in this together. So that's your inner life and reflections. Of course, I could spend a whole seminar talking about that, but I'm just giving you some thoughts for the way ahead. Now, thinking positively about the way ahead. 6 key points here I want to share with you. One of those is to prepare for troubled times and act to prevent them. Now, I know that the term prepping is well known to some of you. I think we've got to do that. We've got to ask the question, what does that look like? And there'll be seminars about that, about how we can prepare for those troubled times and minimize the risks, mitigate against them. What are the actions that we need to take? Now, that might be prepared for losing things, if there's a food shortage or a water scarcity, but it's also what are the actions? And I'll talk about that briefly in a minute as well. We should unite around our best defense. Our best defense in Britain is our culture and our values. That is our best defense. When we own up to who we are, then we know what the rallying standard is. We know where is the point at the hill at which we fight. I'm speaking figuratively here, where we fight to defend who we are and our way of life. Multiculturalism has been one of the most destructive elements in Britain. And I was speaking about it positively years ago, but it's not helpful. It's a failed experiment because no nation that promotes multiculturalism is going to survive. The nation is not going to survive. And no nation apart from the West does that because we have drunk the Kool-Aid. We've imbibed false narratives that somehow we've got to allow everybody who comes here to have their way of life here. That's nonsense. That doesn't happen in any other country other than those that are built on Western Christian, Judeo-Christian values. So we need to call our nation back to our culture and values. Can I say, it doesn't mean that people who come here aren't welcome, or to have their own way of life, to have their own shops, to enjoy the things they like to do. That's not what we're talking about. We're saying that everyone who is in Britain needs to respect the fact that this is Britain, that Britain has its national culture and values, and they need to be in the ascendant, not the opposite way around. We need to challenge government, public institutions, and the corporate media around these things and around everything that they might be doing, especially when they are trying to bring things in by the back door. I'll mention legislation in a minute. We need to get and share a true practical and applicable theology of our times. Now, this is specifically towards those people who are in faith communities, because there is an absence of rational, coherent discussion and debate around what does a practical, applicable theology. I don't mean a progressive one. I don't mean one that embraces everything. That's nothing. That's the way the Church of England has gone. And look at the mess it's in. As someone has said, if you choose not to stand for something, you'll fall for anything. That's exactly what the Church of England has done. So that's something that I will be looking at doing a seminar on going forward. And we need to utilize the power of prayer and of evangelism. Now, that will apply in the main to people in faith communities, but not only. There are lots of people who pray, and evangelism in its broadest sense is about sharing the good news. So there are different aspects of the good news that I think we really need to be evangelistic about. We need to stop being apologetic about the things that we know. And I'll share 3 things that we've been quiet about specifically throughout this election campaign. And I'll be talking about them in just a moment. And we are coming towards the conclusion. So what are the effective actions we can take in the days ahead? Remember, I talked about how we can think positively about the way ahead, and I've talked about our inner life and reflections. Here are 8 effective actions in the days ahead. One is to organize and build community frameworks with like-minded people. We are the resistance, and there are many more of us than we think, but we need to ensure that those community frameworks are strong and effective. They may be around your allotment, they may be in any group, and we could speak of any, but we need to make sure that we are strong in those communities. I mentioned this at the beginning or a little earlier. Consider prepping and contingency planning. Now, there are some really expert people in our own group, and I think we probably have some meetings around that so we can talk about that, and we can open that out to people in our communities. We need to get those positive centers of support established right across the nation, so that as a nation, we are effective, because the people who are in the Palace of Westminster are not going to save us, and public institutions who are at their beck and call are going to be in the forefront of making life difficult. So we, the people, need to have our contingency planning. In all that we do, we need to be aware of negative people. And you know, I think it was Einstein who said, be aware of negative people. They have a problem for every solution. And we need to make sure that they are not in our orbit of activity, but also be aware of opponents and infiltrators. Because when we have our meetings, when we have these this meeting is fairly public here, there will be people who be spies in the camp, and they may have devious intentions. And that is not a conspiracy theory. They really are out there. Let's stay alert to challenge legislative creep and culture shifts. Now, that is really important because number 5, I mentioned petitions. The present lot who are there are going to try and do everything they possibly can to bring about a totalitarian shift in legislation and in the culture. And we, the people, have got to do everything we can to resist that. Now, on Saturday, the 27th of July, there will be, or there will have been, depending on when you see this seminar, a major march, a peaceful one being organized, in which the organizers have said, come peacefully, don't wear masks, let's just have a lovely time, let's sing and celebrate the fact that we are free, sovereign British people. But the powers that be don't want that. They want to end sovereignty. They want to clamp down on the individual. That's what the WEF, the World Economic Forum, the World Health Organization, the United Nations, all of these organizations are focused on doing. So we need to make sure that we are aware of what's going on and we're resisting them. So petitions, organized petitions, you can do that on change.org, sign them, distribute them. Let's get those petitions. Let's create a culture of petitioning and raising our profile as people who are really engaged, really concerned, aware of what's going on. Marches, demonstrations, street events, public meetings to consult and to inform. I was sharing this with some friends at a social event we had recently at our home. We are going to be organizing public meetings. I'll mention 3 of the main areas that I want to begin to raise in the public consciousness. But think about that. Think about what you can be doing and how you can be part of that change. Maximize social media potential. Now, we know that the social media controllers, apart from on X, are not on our side. And I really hope things will change. But at the moment, they're shadow banning a lot of what we do. Let's try and help each other, share things as widely as we can. And I do the best I can to make sure I don't do anything which will trigger one of their algorithms. And hopefully we will be successful in using and maximizing social media going forward. And let's make sure that we also have contact with and meetings with MPs, with councils, with other decision makers and influencers to raise our concerns. And some of them are the 3 points that I'm going to mention in probably the next slide or two. So effective actions in the days ahead. So here are the key areas for public discussion. And the cartoon on the right-hand side of the screen, of course, says it all. The elephant in the room. Now, there are 3 elephants in the room, and I specifically asked my team during this period of standing for election not to raise these. And it's not because I don't believe they are concerned. I believe they are massive concerns. But because people have got into the habit of shutting down public discourse based on their view of who you are, if you actually raise a question, if you dissent from a particular narrative, I said, let's not go there. But these are 3 elephants in the room that now have got to be discussed. How you discuss an elephant, I don't know. But let's take the figure of speech out for a minute. So the China virus. We now know beyond the shadow of a doubt that it was not something that occurred in nature. It was man-made through gain of function research. There have been congressional hearings, and everybody apart from the corporate media in this country and politicians who sit on the green benches in the Palace for Westminster, a lot of people know that's the case. Was it, to use the vernacular, a cock-up or conspiracy? Did it just leak out, or was it intentional? Now, I have a view about that, but this needs to be discussed openly and publicly. Excess deaths. People in their prime of life, young people, young men particularly, are dying in large numbers. Why? Now, we know why, but it needs to come out publicly. And then we've got the weather. Well, we have it. We know it's there. It changes from year to year, from century to century. And people are saying we're all going to end up dead. Well, I think it's time we had a proper discussion publicly about the science. Now, when I was growing up in school and I did science, I did all the subjects, I used to be taught that science was about looking at things, checking out data, observing it, writing it up, being open-minded and challenging each other and challenging public narratives. It seems nowadays that science is being settled. And if someone says it's the science or they're the science, their science is what we have to then begin to start organizing public policy around. That can't be the case. That absolutely cannot be the case. And we need to start having a discussion about the weather, the fact that we've had lots of rain this year, haven't we? Why is that? Why have we had such cloudy skies? What on earth is going on in the skies? And we need to talk about the appalling reality of net zero. No one, absolutely no one, who says we need to get to this fictitious figure called net zero will admit to what the costs are, not just the financial and economic costs, but the human costs. We need to have that discussion. And these are the conversations we need to have with our local councils, our councillors. We need to have public debates about them, Zoom conversations, and we need the whole country to start discussing. And these are just three of the main areas. We're not going to get closure on them. We need to start the process. So this is all part of 24 to 29. I've got some additional actions that I'm giving to myself. I need to take forward my own work on thought leadership through writing. There's a book that I need to write, a particular book, just one of several. The video work, my social media. I want to be reaching out to others and developing strategic and practical networks here across this nation, across this community, but across the nation and further afield. And I want to be actively involved in supporting the development of independence, the independence movement for the general election and for Parliament in 2029. So we've got 5 years in which we need to set ourselves clear goals, in which we say we are going to be active in what we do. Friends, I'm coming to the conclusion of this seminar now, which has been about our general election in 2024. I was very pleased to have the support of course, Mandy, my dear wife, and our team, so solid behind me. Some of you are on the call. Some of you will see this recording. I want to thank you. Once again, you were extraordinary. I could not have done anything of what I'd done without you. And we're going to continue as a team where together everyone achieves more going forward. But this has been about my experiences, lessons learned, and now about looking ahead. And we have a great challenge. We have the battle of our lives. What we have done in the last few months has only been the beginning. What we have yet is really what will prove our mettle. But I want to encourage you with this as I close this seminar and open up to questions and answers and any discussion. The best is yet to come. That rainbow belongs to everyone on planet Earth. It means promise. The story in the Bible is that the rainbow was first seen when Noah and his family came out of the ark, when there had been destruction of the earth. And this rainbow means that there is someone always watching out for us, and we can be sure that the best is yet to come.